Erin Barakovich in her PG&E case. Hinckley, California was a quiet desert town where families trusted their water. For decades, they didn't know their water was poisoned.
Hinckley, California was located in the Mojave Desert of San Bernardino County.
PG&E had operated a natural gas compressor in which they used hexavalent chromium to prevent corrosion.
From 1952 to 1966, the chromium anti-corrosion waste was dumped into ponds that they had left unlined. Chromium seeped into groundwater, which contaminated Hinckley's water system. PG&E's internal studies showed that chromium-6 was hazardous, yet they kept that detail from the public, and the residents were never warned.
PG&E used it as a cheap and effective corrosion inhibitor to prevent rust in the natural gas pipeline's cooling systems. This means that they were using it to prevent rust in the water-based cooling loops of natural gas systems, thereby protecting the pipes from degradation due to water, oxygen, and corrosion gases like CO2 and H2S, which can cause leaks. PG&E made offers to this small community, quietly buying residents' home and land. Their goal was to limit attention to the contamination and reduce their responsibility. By purchasing homes and lands, they tried removing residents from the area instead of fixing the problem.
Civic Gas and Electric. The devastation, the destruction that has been caused.
They said that they were using chromium-3, which is actually good for their water. Chromium-3 helps the body metabolize carbohydrates, fats, and proteins by enhancing insulin's action, which promotes normal blood sugar levels and energy use.
But PG&E wasn't using chromium-3. They were using chromium-6, which was poisoning the people in Hinckley. You guys ever used chromium-3?
We don't. No. The one that we have worked really hard on at LPA is PCBs. So it's kind of similar to what you saw in that case. We now are 99.9% PCB free. We've got two really old pieces of equipment that we're going to be changing out that we monitor very closely, so we know where it is. It's kind of like asbestos, like it's a problem, but if you know exactly where it is and it's not moving, it's stable.
More and more residents of Hinckley started noticing the situation and started asking questions. PG&E continued to ignore them, even though they were seeing an increase in cancer, miscarriages, chronic illness, and multiple deaths between families.
Even among the people who had left Hinckley, it was that they all had lived within the range of the power plant.
PG&E paid for everyone's doctor visits after they had been struggling with diseases from chromium-6. Little did the people from Hinckley know PG&E was paying the doctors to lie to them and tell them that it was not chromium that was making them sick and that it was either genetics or bad food intake.
The chromium was affecting pools and groundwater.
From a quality standpoint, groundwater is typically a lot purer than surface water because there's no way for it to get contaminated, from surface things like E. coli and things like that, but also the ground itself cleans the water, as it percolates into the ground, the sand and rock and stuff actually can clean the water. Selling water to customers, then that takes it to the next level in terms of what has to be tested, and there's state water testing. And so then you're testing for heavy metals like lead, chromium, things like that, requirements that have to be met for levels that are acceptable. The Animas River is downstream from a lot of mines. There was a lot of contamination from those mines up in Silverton. All of this contaminated mine water came down in the pictures, and the Animas turned bright yellow. What made it turn that bright yellow was iron primarily, and iron's actually not dangerous. And so the really dangerous things like lead and chromium, you can't see, smell. So you would never know that's in your water.
One thing you would want the people to know about corporate overreach as it pertains to the environment.
I see a lot of corporations that don't necessarily think about the impacts of what they're doing, and they think about
More
the profit.
residents were affected by PG&E's irresponsibility, such as Gladys Carpenter, Roberta Walker, and so many more suffering from health issues.
Always put safety and people first. Do it right on the up front. Don't kick the can down the line.
Erin Barakovich's success in the PG&E case relied on her organization of the documents she gathered, her determination to investigate beyond the legal realm, and her skill in connecting with the plaintiffs to build trust and gather information. Erin uncovered some files from people's real estate records, which included blood samples from each resident. Erin got in touch with the homeowners of Hinckley to get to the bottom of what PG&E was doing. She started going door to door in Hinckley to interview residents.
This allowed her to establish a personal connection with the community, building the trust needed for them to share their stories and medical records. She found PG&E documents when searching through a ton of random files at her work. Erin Barakovich was not a lawyer. She was a file clerk at Marcy & Vidito, which was a California-based law firm known for its environmental and personal injury litigation.
EPA for a couple of years, and I worked on clean water enforcement. So that was the idea that there's all these regulations for industry to protect how much pollution goes into the water. They pollute more than they're allowed to, then EPA comes in and sort of enforces these cases and tries to figure out ways both to give them like monetary penalties, but also to do some work to try to make their processes better.
Because of Barakovich's tenacity and intuition, she uncovered one of the biggest environmental cover-ups in history. She inspired legislative changes for water quality, demonstrating a single individual power against a giant corporation.
One of the things that changes corporate behavior is they lose a lawsuit and have to pay a lot of money. Two other things that typically change corporate behavior are bad press. They got a lot of bad press from the Erin Brockovich case. And the third thing that absolutely changes behavior is new rules, regulations, or law.
How does the EPA protect not just the environment from toxic spills, poisons of gassing, and reckless mistakes, but also the people?
The Environmental Protection Agency's goal is to protect human health and the environment, making sure that the pollutants that are produced by industry are produced in a way that doesn't get to the humans and the communities that live around those places. The EPA is both creating regulation, like deciding how much pollutant can be put into the air. They're making sure that the industry is following those regulations to protect you.
Did like the event of Erin Brockovich and like the PG&E case change how electrical companies like store their water?
Oh, I would say absolutely. I think, the high profile that case had and the significant settlement that came out of that case definitely changed the way that utilities approach that issue among other environmental issues. And so that was a big moment in kind of the history of environmental protection and the size of these cases. And I would say it went beyond the utility industry. It actually affected how companies broadly look at these issues. The attention that got and the fact that a big company was held accountable for the mistakes that they had made, I think definitely improved environmental protection in the U.S.
This lack of honesty is what Erin Barakovich uncovered, leading her to fight for the Hinckley community and hold PG&E accountable for poisoning many people. This discovery revealed that PG&E was secretly monitoring the health of residents in Hinckley due to the hexavalent chromium contamination. PG&E documents gave Erin more knowledge of toxicity and showed her that PG&E was giving misleading information of the residents in Hinckley.
As a result, in 1966, Erin Brockovich and her partner Marcy settled the case against PG&E, winning $333 million. This was the largest direct action settlement in the U.S. history at the time. The EPA became involved in the Erin Brockovich case by eventually confirming hexavalent chromium-6, as a likely carcinogen in the drinking water, leading to state regulations and federal pressure, though their involvement faced criticism for delays and conflicts of interest, with a panel reviewing findings having ties to PG&E, leading to a long fight for federal standards, despite evidence and a widespread of contamination.
Ground monitoring expanded, chromium-6 regulations strengthened in California, and environmental reporting standards tightened. This settlement forced changes not just in Hinckley, but in how corporations were monitored nationwide. Revolutionary impacts shifted public trust, empowered citizens, fueled the environmental justice movement, and most importantly, even non-lawyers could expose corporations for wrongdoing.
This historical event still matters to this day because it created clean water access to people all around the world, as well as environmental justice forever. It is still going to take 30 to 40 years to clear out all of the chromium-6 out of Hinckley.
To this day, Hinckley is a ghost town, with a population of a little over 300 people. Erin Brockovich reformed the environmental industry, made a revolution in clean water, and used the reaction to save other people.
To this day, ground monitoring expanded, chromium-6 regulations strengthened in California, and environmental reporting standards tightened.
This settlement forced changes not just in Hinckley, but in how corporations were monitored nationwide.